The internet was never meant to be a battleground. When it was first conceived, it was a tool for communication, a digital utopia where ideas could flow freely. But as technology evolved, so did the shadows lurking within it. A new breed of criminal emerged, faceless, anonymous, and almost untouchable. They didn't need guns or getaway cars. All they needed was a laptop, an internet connection, and an understanding of how to exploit the cracks in the digital world. The evolution of cybercrime is not just a story of hackers and stolen data. It's the story of how the internet, once hailed as humanity's greatest invention, became the very thing that threatens the security of governments, businesses, and individuals worldwide. It's the story of how an underground economy flourished beneath our feet, undetected by most, yet affecting millions. In the early days, cybercrime was primitive, almost playful. The 1980s and 90s saw the rise of the first hackers, curious minds who broke into systems just to see if they could. It was an era of exploration. Kevin Mitnick, one of the most infamous hackers of the time, didn't start by stealing millions. He started by cloning bus passes, bypassing phone systems, and accessing networks just for the thrill of it. But corporations and governments soon realized these hackers weren't just digital pranksters, they were a threat. By the mid-90s, companies like Microsoft and IBM had built empires on the growing internet infrastructure. But their security was fragile. Hackers, once seen as lone wolves, began forming groups. By the late 90s, cybercrime had taken a darker turn. Instead of hacking for fun, criminals realized they could hack for profit. Then came the 2000s, the golden age of the internet. Online banking, e-commerce, and digital transactions became the norm. The world was becoming dependent on digital networks, but security was still an afterthought. This is when cybercriminals went from being small-time hackers to organized crime syndicates. One of the earliest and most devastating cyberattacks occurred in 2000, when a 15-year-old hacker known as Mafia Boy launched a series of DDoS, distributed denial-of-service attacks that shut down Yahoo, Amazon, CNN, and eBay. It was a wake-up call. If a teenager could cripple billion-dollar corporations, what could a well-organized group of cybercriminals accomplish? The answer came quickly. By the mid-2000s, cybercrime had transformed into an industry. The Russian business network RBN emerged, one of the first cybercrime syndicates operating as a business. Unlike amateur hackers, RBN offered cybercrime as a service, renting out botnets, launching attacks for hire, and distributing malware at an industrial scale. The internet was no longer a playground for tech-savvy misfits. It had become a battlefield where criminals could operate with near impunity. Then something changed, something that would redefine cybercrime forever. Bitcoin. Before cryptocurrency, cybercriminals had a problem. Even if they stole money, getting away with it was difficult. Banks tracked transactions. Law enforcement could freeze accounts. But Bitcoin offered something different, an untraceable, decentralized currency that could move across borders without regulation. By 2011, dark web marketplaces like Silk Road emerged, where drugs, weapons, and hacked data were traded freely. Payment? Bitcoin. Governments were slow to react. In 2013, when the FBI shut down Silk Road and arrested its creator, Ross Ulbricht, many thought it was the end of online crime. They were wrong. The dark web simply adapted. New markets took Silk Road's place, and cybercriminals became even more sophisticated. Ransomware became the weapon of choice. Unlike traditional cyberattacks, which relied on stealing data, ransomware worked differently. Criminals wouldn't just take information, they would encrypt entire systems and hold them hostage. The only way to get them back? Pay up. And with Bitcoin, the payments were untraceable. One of the most infamous ransomware attacks came in 2017. WannaCry, a self-replicating virus, spread across the world in hours, infecting hospitals, banks, and businesses, paralyzed entire industries. The attack exploited a vulnerability in Microsoft's software, one that had been stolen from the NSA's own cyber warfare arsenal. Governments weren't just fighting cybercrime anymore. They were becoming part of it. This led to a new reality, one where nations themselves became cybercriminals. Countries like Russia, North Korea, and China began investing heavily in state-sponsored hacking groups. In 2014, North Korean hackers attacked Sony Pictures in retaliation for a satirical movie mocking their leader. In 2016, Russian hackers interfered in the US presidential election by spreading disinformation and hacking into campaign emails. Cybercrime was no longer just about money. It was about power. And the worst was yet to come. As the world moved into the 2020s, everything became connected. Smart homes, self-driving cars, even medical devices, everything was linked to the internet. This created opportunities not just for hackers, but for cyber terrorists. The idea that a pacemaker could be hacked, or a city's power grid could be shut down remotely, was no longer science fiction. It was a growing reality. One of the most devastating cyber attacks in recent years was the Colonial Pipeline hack in 2021. A ransomware group called DarkSide targeted the pipeline, shutting down fuel supply across the east coast of the United States. Panic ensued. Gas stations ran dry. Prices skyrocketed. It was one of the first times cybercrime had caused physical chaos at this scale. Today, cybercrime is more sophisticated than ever. Phishing attacks use AI to generate emails so realistic that even security professionals struggle to detect them. Deepfake technology allows criminals to impersonate executives and steal millions in corporate fraud. The rise of AI-driven cyber attacks means that soon, hacking won't even require human effort, just algorithms trained to exploit weaknesses automatically. Yet, despite the increasing threats, cybersecurity is still an afterthought for many. Millions of people reuse passwords, click on suspicious links, and fail to update their systems. Companies, even billion-dollar ones, often prioritize convenience over security until it's too late. The evolution of cybercrime is a story without an ending. Every time security improves, criminals adapt. Every time one dark web marketplace is shut down, another takes its place. The digital arms race between hackers and security professionals continues, and the stakes have never been higher. The rise of cybercrime is not just a tale of digital theft. It is a reflection of how the internet has evolved from a tool of innovation into a battlefield of exploitation. As technology advances, so do the tactics of cybercriminals, who continuously find new ways to infiltrate systems, manipulate data, and extort victims. What started as simple hacking experiments in the 1980s has transformed into a multi-billion-dollar underground economy, where stolen identities, financial fraud, and even cyber warfare are orchestrated on a global scale. Governments, corporations, and individuals are all caught in the crossfire, struggling to keep up with an ever-changing digital threat landscape. The dark web has become the epicenter of this cyber underworld, where illicit marketplaces thrive beyond the reach of traditional law enforcement. Here, cybercriminals operate in anonymity, buying and selling hacking tools, ransomware kits, and stolen information with untraceable cryptocurrencies. The accessibility of these resources has lowered the barrier to entry, allowing even amateurs to launch devastating attacks. The internet, once hailed as a force for good, now harbors a growing network of digital criminals who exploit its very infrastructure to commit crimes on an unprecedented scale. The evolution of cybercrime is not just a phenomenon. It is an ongoing war, one where the attackers are always one step ahead, and the defenders are left scrambling to catch up. The question is no longer if you will be affected by cybercrime, but when. The next major attack could come from anywhere at any time. And in this war, the battlefield is everywhere. The internet was supposed to connect us, empower us, and make life easier. Instead, it has become a battleground, one where cybercriminals, corporations, and governments fight for control.